everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of September, the Libra equinox and the full moon that we have in Aries coming up on the 24th or 25th, depending on where in the world you live. Now, this second half of September has more yang energy, I would say, than the first half. We have this ongoing square between Mars and Uranus, which we've actually had since the beginning of May, had it for many, many months. And it has come into exactitude, exact square twice, and it's going to come into its final third exact square between Mars at 1 degree of Aquarius and Uranus at 1 degree of Taurus on the 18th of the month. Now, as I've talked in the past, this is an aspect that is eruptive, it's volatile. In behavioural terms, it demands freedom and doesn't want any constraint. But I think we can certainly say that it's been strongly correlated with some of the extreme weather that we've seen in the months since May. We've had a global heat wave, we've had some very extreme circumstances. The volcano in Hawaii is ongoing, had an earthquake recently in Indonesia, and just a day or so ago there was a very big 7 magnitude earthquake just north of New Zealand. So this is an ongoing thing for the rest of this month, and then the square moves away. But this signature of Mars square to Uranus is a classical signature associated with volcanoes and earthquakes, particularly when it's in fixed signs. Aquarius and Taurus are fixed signs. And just taking Uranus in Taurus on its own, that is, the symbolism suggests that we're going to have extreme weather events, and it's going to stay in Taurus up until 2026. So this is a strong possibility in this second half of September. If you have any planets yourself in the very early degrees of the fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. If you have any planets in kind of 0 to 3 degrees, you might have already felt this urge for freedom, shaking things up. See particularly where Uranus falls in your chart at 1-2 degrees of Taurus. If you don't know where it falls, check out this link above. You can get tutorial videos that will explain all of this and explain where all these things I'm going to be talking about fall in your chart, and for any update I ever do. But seeing where Uranus at sort of 1-2 degrees of Taurus falls, that is an area that will be shaken up. If it's become stale or routine, if it's in your 6th house, for instance, and that's your daily routine, Uranus will shake it up one way or another. You will consciously change your routine, or it will be changed in some way from the outside. So be aware of where Uranus is moving. But as I say, this signature together, it's brilliant for technological innovation, but it can be quite an impetuous, impulsive, eruptive energy that, as I say, is strongly associated with volcanoes and earthquakes. The very next day, the 19th, the moon comes to conjunct Pluto, and then later in the day it conjuncts Mars and squares Uranus. So it's shining a light again on that Mars-Uranus square. So, and together with that, there could be some intense feeling at that time. So really, from about the 17th onwards, over those few days, 17th, 18th, 19th, and then we get into the equinox and the full moon, I think we're going to be feeling some very strong energy. In addition to that, we have our ongoing T-square between Venus in early Scorpio, square to Mars in early Aquarius, and opposing Uranus in early Taurus. Now, particularly if Venus in early first couple of degrees of Scorpio is falling in your 5th, your 7th, or your 11th house in your birth chart, those are your relationship houses, it can suddenly, out of the blue, bring in a new relationship for you. Or it can even revive a relationship which has been long-standing but become a bit stale. It can also have that very positive effect. So be aware of that. And that T-square is going to continue until the 22nd of the month. Then on the 22nd of the month, we have the equinox in Libra. We have this at 6:54 p.m. Pacific and 2:54 a.m. UK time on the 23rd. Now, with equinoxes and solstices, it's like striking a tuning fork for the next 3 months. It creates a tone, if you like, a background tone or resonance for all the other planetary patterns to fall into. So, Sun is moving into Libra, and this is always strong. I'm going to be talking about the world axis in a moment, because every time we have a solstice or an equinox, the Sun in tropical Western astrology is moving into a cardinal sign. Those are Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But at this equinox, that is when the Sun aligns with the Earth's equator, and what it does is create a drop in the magnetic field for the Earth, and that allows us to access higher level information, particularly if you're sensitive. This is why the ancient peoples held ceremonies at the time of the equinoxes and solstices, because they were aware that the veil became thinner, if you like, to access high-level information, which is very helpful for us. Now, we are going to see an emphasis in this world axis and something else I'll talk about in a moment. Now, just to explain what the world axis is, this is essentially 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, which I just mentioned. So if you have a planet, and it's within a 2-degree orb, by the way. So if you have a planet from 0 to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or 28 of the mutable signs, those are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, up until that 0 degrees of the cardinals, you have a planet on the world axis. And what that means is that that planet tends to be thrown out onto the public stage in some way. For instance, my Mercury is at 1 degree of Aries, so I don't work in a shop. My communication is out in front of the public, which is exactly what I'm doing now. So just take a look at your birth chart, because it's very interesting to see that. And equally, events that are going to be happening at this time may become quite global, big events. Because not only is the Sun at 0 of Libra, obviously at the Libra equinox, but it is also aspecting the supergalactic center, which is at 2 degrees of Libra. And I've talked about this before, so it's a tight conjunction with the supergalactic center. Now, supergalactic center is this massively powerful vortex of cosmic energy and radiation. And what it offers us when planets align with it is a stream of superconsciousness. Again, very high level information. And people who have planets around 2 degrees of Libra or in square or opposition to that tend to be quite sensitive with energy if that's happening in their natal chart. And they may well work as a healer or some kind of teacher, spiritual teacher of some kind. So be aware of that in your natal chart. So every time we have an equinox or a solstice, this is going to be the case, that the Sun is moving onto the world axis, but also aspecting by conjunction, square or opposition the supergalactic center. But the reason I'm talking about this is it is emphasized again because our full moon in Aries is at 1 degree and 59 minutes of Aries. So just within that 2 degree orb that we allow of 0 of the cardinals. And this is going to happen on the 24th of September. It's going to happen at 7:52 p.m. Pacific and 3:52 a.m. UK time the next day. So it's very close to this equinox. So here we have the moon at 1:59 of Aries. It's conjunct Chiron, which is at 0 of Aries, also on the world axis. They are opposing the Sun at 1:59 of Libra, which is on the supergalactic center. And both the Sun, Moon, and also Chiron are squaring Saturn at 2 degrees of Capricorn, which is squaring the world axis and the supergalactic center. So there's a lot of emphasis on potentially big events that are going to be on the public stage in some way. So there's several ways that we may feel this. We may feel this Environmentally, as I say, this Mars-Uranus square is very strong in this second half of September. So we may be seeing some volcanoes or earthquakes or of strong events. And I just want to say, going back to the equinox, in terms of astrocartography, Pluto and Uranus are angular, i.e. very strong, through the southern states, the central southern states of America. So we'll see if something is going to manifest there. Uranus is also on the midheaven running through London and Spain at the equinox. Now, I doubt we're going to have an earthquake in London, but we may have a political earthquake, because right on the day of the equinox, 23rd, which is where it happens in the UK, there is a huge public march to demand a people's vote, a second vote on Brexit. And the following month, there is another major march on a similar topic. So politically, we are going through a messy, eruptive, disruptive, chaotic and potentially revolutionary time in the UK. I can easily see that the government could be challenged, let's say, with such public sentiment. I'm not sure what will happen in Spain. We'll wait and see. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in every country, but it's where planets become angular at these important times, and that's where often they come into manifestation. So we may see strong environmental weather happenings, earth events happening in this second half, either round about the 18th or round about the equinox and this full moon. Because remember that a full moon is the peak of the moon cycle. It brings things to a head. And in this case, in Aries, we are dealing with primal fire. So we're dealing with very strong assertive energy, heat potentially, to add to that Mars-Uranus square. It's often a time, personally, if you look at where 159 of Aries falls in your chart, is something coming to culmination, or you're seeing the fruits of your labour in some way, something's coming to closure, or is it shining a light on an area that you need to become more aware of? Is it shining a light in your 5th house? You need to have a lot more fun in your life. Is it shining a light on your 10th house and something's been building to fruition there? So seeing where it falls is very helpful in understanding the meaning for you. Personally, again, if we look at this Moon in Aries and Sun in Libra, this is very much in a general sense about relationship, because Libra is the sign of relationship, that's where the Sun is, but the Moon in Aries is a sign of, it's all about me first. It is terrific as a pioneering, courageous energy that's full of initiative and it's happy to take a risk. So again, see if you can use that in a very positive way, depending on where 159 of Aries is falling in your chart. But in relationship terms, it's me. It's a simple, direct energy. I want to go and do something, I go do it. I don't necessarily consult people around me or check if that's okay with the partner. I just go. It's a highly independent energy. Whereas Libra, Sun in Libra, is all about us in a relationship. It's about we. It's about compromise, balance, fairness. So that sort of issue could come up. The imbalance or the inequality in the relationship coming around by one person is always just going off to do their own thing or leading what the relationship does, and the other person always having to compromise and keep in line. So those issues of imbalance or inequality could come up in relationship, particularly if this full moon falls in your relationship houses of your 5th, your 7th, your 11th houses. But what's interesting as well is the Sun and Moon here are squared by Saturn, as I said earlier. Now this can be a reality check. So any sudden relationship that suddenly emerged earlier in the month can be checked, can be tested now. Or even a longer term relationship can be tested. because what Saturn does when it's connected to relationship is to test a weak relationship, but to consolidate a strong one. So see how that works for you, and be very aware of what's happening in terms of relationship dynamics. This is where really astrology is so helpful for us. It can, of course, represent inequality on a bigger stage. There's so much inequality in the world, and perhaps that's going to become even more obvious at this time of the full moon, particularly because Chiron is still at the world axis, the suffering, where people feel, I don't have a right to exist, even in an extreme case of inequality. So inequality and unsocial revolution, Mars-Uranus square, social protests happening around issues of inequality or lack of fairness in society, or a strong possibility at this time. So it could manifest personally for you, it could manifest on the world stage. Also on the world stage, if any of our world leaders are becoming particularly assertive or aggressive, moon in Aries, they may be checked by law and order. Saturn, planet of law and order, square to both the sun and the moon. So that's going to be interesting around this time too. But remember, even though the full moon is going to be shining a light on the world's suffering, Chiron, there will be solutions to this. There may be protests, but there may also be solutions, because we still just about have this ongoing trine between Jupiter and Neptune, which connects us to source. We potentially can get some very high level solutions and insight, not only at the equinox, but also at the full moon as well, with these connections to the supergalactic center and any extra information we can get. And any insights and new ideas that we get in this second half of September, we still have this ongoing trine between Saturn at 2 of Capricorn and Uranus at 2 of Taurus. And what that means is that the new ideas, the new insights, Uranus can become permanent, or certainly long-term. They can become established. So they're not just going to be pie in the sky and we forget them. We are going to actually put them into manifestation. So there's a terrific amount of hope and opportunity coming up at this full moon as well. But remember, there'll be a lot of passion. There'll be a lot of fiery feelings coming to a head. So be very careful to step back if you feel those surges of perhaps too much fire coming up in you emotionally. Always step back and think twice before you express what you are thinking of going to say. So a lot going on in this second half. And if you'd like more information about my books, my ever so long monthly newsletter, my tutorial videos, I've recently filmed 90 minutes of very concentrated teaching on romantic relationships. Astrologically, it's a little higher level. It's not for total beginners, but I'm getting really super feedback on that. There's a lot in those two videos called The Alchemy of Relationship, and you can just find all these products on my website. And in the meantime, have a wonderful equinox in Libra and full moon on the 24th and 25th of September. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.